Filing status and dependents. Let's talk a little bit about filing status first. Please turn to section B8 in your Pub 4012 Volunteer Resource Guide. Here you will find a flowchart which will walk you through the facts in order to determine the correct filing status. More interview tips along with expanded explanations continue on page B9. You can also find more information in Pub 4491 beginning on page 4-1. Who is considered single? Taxpayers who are not married, legally separated or divorced or widowed before the beginning of the tax year and did not remarry are single filers. Wisconsin is a marital property state, and returns for taxpayers who are legally separated or for those who divorce in the current tax year are difficult, and we are not trained to prepare these state returns. Those returns are out of scope. Married filing jointly is a typical status for taxpayers who are married and live together. There are some other instances that qualify for this status as well. They can be married and have different homes. They can be common law married taxpayers. However, Wisconsin does not recognize these unions, and we would still need to file the state return as single. A surviving spouse who did not remarry before the end of the tax year may also file married filing joint for that year. Another option for taxpayers who file as married filing jointly is a return for the injured spouse. Essentially, this addition to the filing status protects the refund for the spouse who does not have a legal obligation to pay a certified debt of the other spouse. A qualifying widow or widower with a dependent child is entitled to file as married filing joint for the year the spouse died, and the spouse must have died in the 2 prior tax years. They must have a child or stepchild that can or could be claimed as a dependent, and the widow or widower must have paid more than half of the cost of keeping up the home for the entire year. Head of household is a status used for unmarried or those taxpayers who are considered unmarried and provided more than half the cost of maintaining a home for themselves and a qualifying person. You will find a decision tree on page B8 of Pub 4012. If you still have questions about the correct filing status, there are other methods to get an answer. The following page, page B9 of Pub 4012, asks questions in a different manner. More information is found in Pub 4491, beginning on page 41, but there is also another tool included in TaxSlayer. Inside TaxSlayer, when we are preparing the return for filing, there is a tab entitled Filing Status Wizard. This tool will guide you to the correct status as well. You see, there are many helpful avenues for you to determine the correct filing status. Dependents. We need to determine if anyone in the taxpayer's household qualifies as a dependent. A person, other than the taxpayer or the spouse, who entitles the taxpayer to claim a dependency exemption is defined by the IRS. A dependent can affect other tax issues such as filing status and some credits. Dependents must pass a number of different tests in order to qualify. They can either be a qualifying child or they can be a qualifying relative. Beginning with the 2020 tax year, having a dependent does not impact the tax return the same way it did previously. Tax benefits, though, of having dependents may include head of household or qualifying widow or widower filing status, which is higher than the standard deduction, child tax credit, the earned income tax credit, the child and dependent care credit, and education credits, such as the American Opportunity Credit. Dependents come in many different forms. Please turn to page C3 of Pub 4012 for the qualifications for all dependents. You can follow down this chart as the first determination of qualification. You may also use Pub 4491 beginning on page 6.1. Dependents who do not meet the tests for qualifying child might meet the slightly different tests to be a qualifying relative. In addition to the dependent taxpayer, joint return, and citizen or resident tests, there are 4 additional tests that must be met for a person to be a qualifying relative. Follow the chart on page C4 of Pub 4012. There is an additional exception to the gross income test in footnote 3. We will have a slide of that following. Gross income of an individual who is permanently and totally disabled does not include income from a sheltered workshop. Gross income means all income the person received. Do not include Social Security benefits unless the person is married filing a separate return and lived with their spouse at any time during the year, or if 1/2 the Social Security benefits plus their other gross income and tax-exempt interest is more than $25,000 for single or $32,000 if married filing jointly. Sometimes this will enable us to use a dependent status for a parent who does not live with their child, but the child provides more than half of their support, paying their rent, groceries, and so on. There are times where a child may qualify as a dependent of more than one person. Turn to page C-2 in Pub 4012 for the rules. More information can be found in Pub 4491, beginning on page 6-5. One more status would be for children of divorced or separated parents or parents who live apart. Page C6 in Pub 4012 gives us a flowchart to use in this case. See Pub 4491, beginning on page 610 as well. The custodial parent signs a written declaration, Form 8332, or a similar statement that he or she will not claim the child as a dependent for the year, and the non-custodial parent attaches this declaration to his or her return. If the decree or agreement went into effect after 1984 and before 2009, the non-custodial parent may be able to attach certain pages from the decree or agreement instead of the Form 8332. For a pre-1985 decree or agreement, please see Pub 17. If they do not provide this form or that portion of the decree or agreement pertaining to this issue, we will still e-file the return without attaching it. We do need to inform the taxpayer if there is an issue. They may receive a letter from the IRS, and it would be requesting this information.